This is Money, Motivation, and Mike, and I am your host, Michael Wainwright, in charge of all the controls, audio engineer, Jason Wright. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip and find all of our content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@MX3 Podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all our new content, which Jason releases every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. And speaking of the YouTube channel, Jason, here at Money, Motivation, and Mike, this is a monumental day as we have reached and succeeded the 60,000 subscriber number. And as of the reading and listening and recording of this show, we're at 60,568 subscribers. That's fantastic. Once again, we are flattered and thank you for what you continue to do and listen and view our show. Hey, we're finishing up here on the second episode of the Olympics, as the Olympics are getting very close to coming to an end here. And, you know, Jason, as I continue to research and get prepared for the show, we could do the Olympics for a couple of months with no problem. And as I got prepared for this show today, where I said we're going to come back and talk about some of the details, where last week's we talked about a lot of the statistics, and heck, I've got six, eight topics just today that we could talk about. And literally, you could take each one of these topics, like the cost of the games, the economic impact, the IOC, when TV come into play, the budget, different things like that. But we're going to try to cover all these in a quick way and give you a little taste of each one of these. And then maybe you need to go out and get a little more interest and do a little research on your own. And then towards the end of our show, as we finish up with closing ceremonies, we will give the actual Olympic medal count of where we are as of today. By the way, I have also heard back from some folks that cannot believe we have that big of a lead in all of the medals over the rest of the countries in the world. It's phenomenal, and we as United States of America are to be proud of that. And frankly, are to be proud of anybody who competes in the Olympics and wants to stand by what the Olympics actually stand for. So once again, Olympics starting back up here, 4th century by Baron Pierre, and then founded in 1894 by the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, when really the modern games started in 1894. And as we talked about last week, Athens, Greece, in 1896 was the start, and then on in 1900 to Paris, where the Olympic Games are being held as we speak. So how do you get into the Olympics? Because there's numerous people that, especially in the United States of America, their nationality is another country, and then they move to the U.S. and they become U.S. citizens, either as just a U.S. citizen or dual citizenship with another country of their nation where they actually came from. So the Olympic Charter requires that an athlete be of nationality of that country for which they compete. Dual nationals may compete for either country as long as 3 years has passed since the competitor competed for the former country. All right. So if you've never competed in the Olympics and you get citizenship, you can go compete in the Olympics right now. Now, of course, not this one. The trials, etc., and the qualifications for getting in are passed. But within, I would, let's see, what are we taking here? The trials are typically a couple of months out. So you could become a citizen within 6 months and be competing with that particular country's name across your chest at the next Olympics. The forerunners here of the modern games, and where the term Olympic has came from, and what best describes the events in the modern era. You know, it's been documented since the 17th century, but it was first organized by the lawyer Robert Dover between 1612 and 1642, with several later celebrations leading up to the present day. And what I mean by that is the Olympics was kind of hit and miss. They would have it, then they wouldn't have it, on and on and on, leading up to the 1896 games. So we've had things, for example, the National Olympic Festival held annually. They were doing it every year, Jason, from 1796 to 1798 in the revolutionary France. And then from 1834 to 1836, the Olympic Games were held in Sweden, and Stockholm. Almost 25,000 spectators saw the events in 1836. Then we moved to 1896 with what we call the modern day first games, held under the IOC as the host in Athens, as we've mentioned. The games brought together. Now, I don't know, did you just mention to me we have about 200 countries now or something like that?
206 in the Olympics.
It's 206 nations.
Yeah.
The Athens Games of 1896 had 14 nations and only 241 athletes who competed in 43 events. Now, I think the Americans took over 500 athletes to Paris for these 2024 Olympic Games. Now, these games of 1896 and how did those get funded? The Greek government had a trust to fund future Olympics, and this trust was used to help fund and finance the 1896 games. And as we get more into things, as we see, as I have budgets and economic impact that will be coming up on. Now, after the success of the 1896 games, you think about that, 14 nations and 241 athletes was considered major success. But after the success of these games of 1896, the Olympics entered a period of stagnation, which threatened its survival. The Olympics was on the ropes of continuing to be an event. The Olympic Games held in Paris in 1900, and then the Olympic Games held in St. Louis in 1904 failed to attract much participation or notice. Of the 650 athletes in the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis, Missouri, USA, 580 were from America. How about that? 580 of the 650. That means there's only 70 athletes from the rest of the world sent to St. Louis in 1904. Now, here's something interesting. Back then, they ran a marathon, and the winner of the marathon was later disqualified upon discovery of a photo of him riding in a car during the race. Good stuff right there. Now, you wonder back in those days, well, how much cheating was going on then, such as jumping in a car and riding along in the marathon, compared to how much cheating is going on today with performance-enhancing drugs and failing those tests and all those good things. Cost of the games, and this is just some of these things here, and these numbers just blew me away. The Oxford Olympic Study 2016 found that since 1960, sports-related costs of the Summer Games were on average $5.2 billion, and Winter Games $3.1 billion. These figures do not even include the infrastructure costs, such as roads, urban rail, airports, stadium builds, etc., which often cost much more than the sports-related costs themselves. The most expensive Summer Games were the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Somewhere between 40 and 44 billion was spent on those Olympics. And the most expensive Winter Olympics so far was 2014 Seoul at $51 billion. As for the 2016 cost per athlete, were on average, this is per athlete, $599,000 for the Summer Olympics. This is 2016, and $1.3 million for their Winter Olympics for London 2012. The cost per athlete was, let me start that over. London 2012, the cost of an athlete was $1.4 million, and the figure was $7.9 million for the 2014 winners. Incredible. The 1976 games in Montreal and the 1980 games in Moscow had burdened organizers with expenses much greatly in excess of the revenues, which pulled back the Los Angeles Committee, and they strictly controlled expenses for the 84 Olympics by using existing facilities. Only two new events were built. Two new structures were built. They also had a committee that year called the LA 84 Foundation. Now, here's something. The organizing committee of the 84 Foundation, the LA 84 Foundation, was Peter Ueberroth, one of the commissioners, former commissioner of Major League Baseball. Also in 1984, by using these existing facilities, they also brought in lots of corporate sponsors. And from this, excess money was made to promote youth sports. The excess money was given to promote youth sports in Southern California. The 1984 Summer Olympics are often considered, until that date, the most financially successful modern Olympics and a model for future games. Now, budget overruns are common for the games. Average overrun of the games since 1960 has been 156%, which means that the actual cost turned out to be, on average, 2.56 times the budget that was estimated at the time of winning the bid to the host games. Montreal in 1976 had the highest cost overrun for summer games. And for those games, they overran 720%. Lake Placid in 1980 had the highest cost of overrun for winter games at 340%. London in 12, overruns of 76%. And Seoul in 2014 at 289%. The final cost of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics was reported to be $13 billion US. Jason, that's a lot of money for games. And there's also been protests of, why would you spend so much money on games when we have a major hunger issue in this world? I guess it's all how you slice and dice it, and what you stand for and what you don't, and what you think you should, and on and on and on. Some economists are skeptical about the economic benefits of hosting the Olympic Games, emphasizing that such mega events, I mean, I don't want to compare it to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl lasts one day, and actually there's build up to that with the NFL experience, etc. But you're talking about games from early in the morning till late at night for roughly 2 weeks. But these mega events often have large costs while yielding relatively few tangible benefits in the long run. We just talked about all the overages that come along with that. Hosting the Olympics appears to increase the host country's exports, as the host or candidate country sends a signal about trade openings when bidding to host the games. Research suggests that hosting the Summer Olympics has a positive impact on the headquartered host city, which seems to benefit the local sector. These effects begin in the years leading up to the games and might persist for several years afterwards, but obviously they deteriorate because they are just, they're not permanent. All right. The IOC, which we know was established there in 1894. The Olympic movement encompasses a large number of national and international sporting organizations and federations, also media partners, athletes, officials, judges, and every other person and institution that has agreed to abide by the rules of the Olympic Charter. As the umbrella of the organization of the Olympic movement, the IOC is in charge. Now, the Olympic movement is made up of three major elements. International federations are the governing bodies. National Olympic committees represent and regulate the Olympic movement within their country. Organizing committees for the Olympic Games are temporary committees responsible for the organization of each Olympic Games in their local areas. Obviously, the organizing committees of the Olympic Games are dissolved after each Games and once the final reports is delivered to the OIC. So there's your three branches for putting together these Olympics. Now, the budget, when you do receive that host, that nomination, or actually the appointment to host a future Olympics. During the first half of the 20th century, the IOC ran on a small budget. As the president of the IOC from 1952 to 1972, Avery Bundage rejected all attempts to link the Olympics with commercial interest. He did not want commercial sponsorships because he believed that the corporate interest would lobby, and then that would affect the decision making. When Bundage retired, the IOC had $2 million in assets. That's 1972. 50 years ago, only $2 million in assets. 8 years later, after he retired, the IOC budget assets had swelled to $45 million through corporate monies. Obviously, this was a shift from the view of the committee of what Avery had to where, frankly, they are now. And a lot of that is due to the corporate sponsorship, and then, of course, the sale of the TV rights, which, here you go, the 1984 Summer Olympics, they began with a watershed movement, as we've talked about, as the example of where the Olympics are today when it comes to money. And then, as I also talked about, the organizational committee of Peter Ueberroth, a major player in Major League Baseball for many years. Now, I just told you those numbers. And in 1972, that IOC had $2 million. The 1984 Summer Olympics generated $225 million, an unprecedented amount. Now, what did the IOC do? The organizing committee had been able to create such a surplus in part, and once again, going back to what I told you about helping out these youth programs in Southern California. So what did the IOC do? They went out and established their own committee, and in 1985, they sought to gain control of all these sponsors, of course, which they did. Effect of the TV. The 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin were the first games to be broadcast on TV, though only to local audience. There's not any money in that. They're basically covering Bob's pharmaceutical shop down on the corner store. That type of stuff. The 1956 Winter Olympics in Italy were the first internationally televised Olympic Games. And the broadcasting rights for the following Winter Olympics in California were sold for the first time to television broadcasting networks, and CBS paid $394,000 for those rights. $394,000. Hold on. CBS paid $375 million for just the American broadcast rights for the 1998 Nagano Games. $375 million just from border to border. While NBC spent $3.5 billion on just the American rights to air every Olympic Games from 2000 to 2012. So, NBC in 2011 come back and agree to pay $4.38 billion to broadcast the games up through 2020. Went back and renegotiated the contract for 8 more years and paid $4.38 billion for that 8 years. Now remember, from 72 to 80, the IOC went up $43 million, and now they're getting the billions. All right. NBC then agreed to a $7.7 billion contract, an extension. They signed May 7th, 2014 to air the Olympic Games through 2032. So if you're wondering, Jason, for the next 8 years, NBC will be bringing you the Olympics. And they have 7.75 billion reasons why. Viewership has increased X-fold from the 1960s until the end of the 20th century. The global audience for the 1968 Mexico City Games was estimated at 600 million people, whereas the audience numbers for the Los Angeles Games in 1984 increased to 900 million people. And then this number has swelled to 3.5 billion by the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. So as we know, they continue and grow and grow and grow, and frankly, people want to tune in. I tune in to see who's going to be the next world record holder. How fast can you run the 100-yard dash? I mean, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. They're in the low nines, and these gymnasts, they come off that floor, they look like they're 20 feet high, and they do more flips. Are they ever going to come down? Those particular events, especially the gymnastics, boy, I just hold my breath, because gymnastics just looks so dangerous on TV. Of course, a lot of people think getting in the batter's box at 100-mile-an-hour baseball coming at your head is dangerous too. But hey, more power to you. The symbols. The Olympic movement uses symbols to represent the ideas embedded in the Olympic Charter. The Olympic symbol, better known as the Olympic rings. Everybody knows those 5 intertwined rings, which represent the 5 inhabited continents. Africa, the Americas is considered one continent. Asia, Europe, and what's that word? Oceania, whatever.
Yeah, that's a tough one to say.
That when we talked about that a year ago on this show, we struggled then. Let's just call it the New Zealand, Australia area is the other area. So that's the reason for the 5 rings. And the reason for these particular colors, the colored version of the rings, blue, yellow, black, green, and red, over a white field, forms the Olympic flag. These colors were chosen because every nation had at least one of them in its national flag. The flag was adopted in 1914 and flown for the first time at the 1920 Olympics in Belgium. The Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, was proposed by Pierre de Coubertin in 1894 and has been official since 1924. Did you know the Olympics had a motto?
I did not.
Faster, higher, stronger. Okay. The flame. The flame has been an Olympic symbol since 1928. And the torch relay was only introduced at the 1936 Olympics. Only. We're approaching 90 years. But the torch relay, 1936, and it is, a huge thing to get to carry that torch for one part of that relay leg. The medal presentation. The medal ceremony, as everyone knows, is held after the conclusion of each Olympic event. The winner, the second place, third place competitors, and teams stand atop of the 3-tiered podium to be awarded their respective medals by a member of the IOC. We all know it's silver, gold, bronze. You'd be interested in knowing how much gold is actually in the gold medal. I believe it's less than 10%. Yeah. All 3, the gold medal is basically made up of silver. Okay. After the medals have been received, the national anthems, the national flags of the 3 medalists are played, and the national anthem of the gold medalist country is played. The practice of awarding Olympic medals at a podium ceremony was established, once again, another year, 1932. Very good stuff. The Olympic Games program consists of 35 sports and 408 events.
The medal is 95.4% silver.
Less than 5%.
Yes.
I said less than 10%.
Says it must be made out of at least 95.4
of silver.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Then plated with gold.
The second place gets more silver than the gold than the first place does. Okay, closing ceremonies, which comes to an end. The closing ceremony of the Olympic Games takes place on a Sunday, which we're just a couple days away right now, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
And after all sporting events have concluded, flag bearers from each participating country enter the stadium, followed by athletes who enter together without a national distinction. 3 national flags are hoisted while the corresponding nations' anthems are played. The flag of the current host country, the flag of Greece, to honor the birthplace of the Olympic Games, and the flag of the country hosting the next Summer or Winter Olympic Games, whichever one you're at. The president of the organizing committee, and the IOC president make their closing speeches. The games are officially closed, and the Olympic flame is out. Until next time. Now, as of the recording of this show, which we are 2 days out from the closing ceremonies right now, and we talked about the distinct advantage that the United States of America has in all 4 categories, meaning the gold, silver, bronze, and the total count, continues in these games, except for one little distinction. China has 32 gold. United States only has 30 right now. Now, United States has 104 medals to the China's 77. Australia has moved up to 47 total medals, where France had been holding on to that deal. Australia has moved up because they now have 18 golds, where France only has 14, and Great Britain has 14 as well. Now, I saw a show of where they were talking about what the United States and what China have left in the gold opportunities. And the United States, with what they have left, the volleyballs, men's and women, the basketballs, men's and women, a few more track events. It was like a 4-to-1 ratio of the United States' opportunities to get golds versus China being able to receive a gold. As a matter of fact, as I told you off the air, China's opportunity to get gold has basically down to the end of like ping pong. Table tennis.
There you go.
Better known as ping pong. And like we were talking about, if you have seen these ping pong matches, and you played ping pong as you grew up, or even ever been on a table or watched a table. If you've ever been to a boys club, you've probably watched ping pong. It's impressive how they just blister away. Now, I was also, in a very jokingly way, told, as I was talking about a table tennis ping pong match the other day, one person told me, until we get Forrest Gump back, the United States of America does not have a chance to win the ping pong championship. So, for all you ping pong wannabeers, I guess it's time to pull out the Forrest Gump videos and start getting some lessons. Money Motivation of Mike continues to bring you content that obviously you are very excited to hear and listen to, and we are very excited to bring it to you. Once again, info@mx3.vip is how you can contact us. We look forward to hearing from you. You can also find us at mx3.vip and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@mx3 Podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, what comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. Now, on our next show, we will have the final numbers of all the Olympic medals before we move into the next topic. So, for everyone who's been a part of this show, continue to live your life the right way.